Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Conquest. It's been a while. Sorry for the irregular schedule, but I'm back. Work and other hobby got in the way, so now we're back with another episode of Conquest. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that's a little bit different from what I'm usually covering. I'm usually covering like how to start series. We got a lot of videos on Alt Dominion and how we can start playing Alt Dominion. Now let's go back to sort of my comfort zone. Let's talk about Spires. Today's episode, what specifically we want to talk about is competitive Spire and how I sort of built my list that I bring to a tournament a couple of weekends ago where I won first place. So I just want to go through what the list looks like and how do I sort of bring about those lists, and also talk about like the matchups that we had and sort of like what was the lesson learned and what things I could improve from that experience. So I want to preface this video by saying a couple of things related to competitive list building in Conquest. Number one, I feel the most important thing in Conquest is that you need to be aware of your local meta. Now, this is sort of an advice that is kind of generic in a sense. If you're playing something competitive, you should always be careful of what your opponent is bringing. However, what I'm trying to say is that Conquest is a traditional war game in a sense that lists that you bring, or the things that you have, or even the faction that most importantly, the faction that you bring will not be changing anytime soon unless you want to start a second faction or you sold your previous faction and buy a new one. So if you have, like, for example, 2-3 Spire players, 2-3 Wadrun players, 2-3 Dweg players, 2-3 100k players, then those are sort of the pool of players that you're going to play with. Now, as far as I know, there isn't a big tournament scene international, at least from like different regions or different countries, other than that one online TTS tournament that was sort of like community driven. So I don't understand if there's any sort of like international meta. I would say that there's a local meta and there might be a regional meta. If you have sort of like a big region in which like some lists are showing up more so than others. Like, for example, if we go to the country above us, which is Singapore, they have the infamous 4 Jotnars list, or 5 or even 5 Jotnar lists. I'm not too sure, but that list has been sort of winning there every single time. Now, of course, people are going to look at it and go, oh my god, 4 or 5 Jotnars are really, really good. And it might be true, but at the same time, it hasn't been sort of really tested outside of its local meta. So from the environment there, it's very important to see like what is sort of the top dogs are, and then you need to sort of devise a way in order for you to be able to fight against them. Now, unfortunately, with the way that Conquest is, once you sort of start on a faction, it's really hard to swap out. However, each faction does have certain tools against certain players. Like, for example, in a Spire mirror, Vanguard clones suddenly becomes really, really good because they have attack of 2, so they can output a lot of attacks to bypass Spire's low defense. Spire against Dweg is usually a bad matchup for the Dweg player because, yes, their warriors can hit really, really well, but they're only doing 1 attack each. Meanwhile, Spires can then heal up, they can regen. So the best way to take out Spire Ball is through things like Firewall, which punishes the Spire for going sort of tall. So there's a lot of these sort of small things that will influence the way that you make your list simply on what your meta entails. So that's number one. Number two, terrain matters a lot. Now, this is something that I learned also as a tournament organizer, in that terrain placement is super important in a game of Conquest, and let me tell you why. So, number one, there isn't a lot of strict guidelines in how you build a terrain in Conquest. There's sort of like the recommended setup of terrains. By recommended, I mean at least one terrain per each stable quarters. You need to have at least spaces so that a regiment that's 3 wide can go through the terrains, and try to minimize, impassable terrain as much as you can, and don't put things like garrison within a certain amount of inch from the objective. Now, this is also important because Conquest, you could as a tournament organizer, you can shift around the table a bit between the rounds, but generally I like to keep the table as it is so that players can sort of study the lay of the land. And then what the factor that differentiates is the scenario itself. What I mean by why terrain is important is, for example, there is a big ass forest in the middle of the map. Now suddenly, cavalry gets a little bit difficult getting charges through because there's a forest. Ranged unit can't shoot through the forest, so the guys in the forest can hide on the ranged units. So a lot of things needs to be taken into account for, otherwise one thing will be the most dominant. Like for example, having an archer unit, like a 5-6 stacks of longbow backed by an air mage on top of a hill, that even though that it won't it will project a lot of pressure because it can reach across the battlefield, and because they have size 3, they can basically touch anywhere if there's no terrain blockers somewhere in the middle. On the flip side, also, you don't want too dense of a terrain because that also like makes the game slightly grindy because not a lot of movement can happen. So it's a little bit of sort of like check and balances to see like whether terrain is playing a huge important factor in your game. And of course, number 3 is the objective itself. Objective is super important. Again, this is sort of like a no-brainer advice. But I feel like, for example, if you're building a list for a tournament, you need to keep those in mind. For example, heavy duty encourages you to bring heavy units, as the name say, or grind them down, which heavily encourages having a medium unit. So a lot of these combination of events might be in favor of certain matchups and might be in favor less of the certain matchups. So those are the 3 things that I would like to talk about as a preamble to the list. So if you guys want to sort of, skip through it, I'll put up a timestamp in which you can sort of skip the preamble. So now let's go to the meat of the video itself. So right here, I will share you 2 lists that I decided to bring for this tournament. Now, sort of my principle of building, so let me maybe before we do that, let's set up like some ground rules on this tournament itself. Number 1, I would like to have release models only. Why I want to have release models only? Because I want to incentivize people who have already dedicated their time in buying this game. So I want to reward them for bringing things that they already have. This is not exactly a beginner-friendly tournament because we're starting at 1500. However, the community sort of is okay with having 1500 as sort of like the baseline. So this is where we start. Number 2, this is a 2-list format. I know some people are against the idea of a 2-list format, but I feel having 3 scenarios and 2 lists will give about some varieties of lists and makes player not being they can switch lists quite, depending on what their matchups are. Like for example, if you're fighting against Old Dom, Apex Predator almost does nothing. Like they do absolutely nothing. But against other lists, then suddenly your Apex Predator becomes the scariest thing on the board. Or against like Old Dominion. I mean, I'm using Old Dominion as an example because I've played a fair bit of Old Dominion for the playtest. So with that said, I brought here Spires. I started with Spires. I don't think I'll ever stop playing Spires because I think like they're just really, really good. It's a 1500 list, so I brought 2 lists. The first one is the Meatball V2. I copied, I didn't exactly copy this list because it was a 2000 point list, but I got inspired by someone in Discord saying that, hey, let's bring like a bunch of force-grown drones, throw them into combat, and see what happens. So Ferromancer is the commander here. So our warlord option. Now Ferromancer has a couple of interesting things. First of all, he has to suppress survival instinct. So let's read this real quickly. Suppress survival instinct. While this character stand is on the battlefield, all regiments with the character warband with a 16-inch of the character stand may reroll failed morale test. So immediately making whatever unit that the Ferromancer is, he starts at resolve 3. They become resolve 4, and then they got reroll to their save. So making them almost, impervious to panic attacks. And then it has, I also give them the character special unit Pheromonic Gland Burst. Now this is interesting one. You can give it +1 movement or +1 resolve. I usually go for the resolve because it suddenly makes them resolve 5 with rerolls. So that's really, really good. For the mutation, I gave him Biotech Wellspring. Such a good draw event. You activate your unit, you heal AoE D6. Really, really freaking good. Coupled that with his supremacy, The Unnumbered Menagerie, which gives it regen 4. So when your Force Grown Drone activates, it gives them regen 4. When your Ferromancer activates, you give them also heal d6. So these combinations will keep this unit very, very alive and make them stay on the battlefield for a long time. Now, just quickly going through the list. So each of the Force Grown Drone will have 6 stands. Now the reason for 6 stands is because 6 plus 1 character equals you have to destroy each model to a man. So meaning that you almost can't be one shot. Well, you can be one shot, but they need to deal a grand total of 28 wounds in order to, 24 wounds in order to do so. Let me explain. So with 7, it goes half, right? So you should have broken at 3, because 7, rounded down, is 3. And then from 3, you can't be shattered, essentially. Because if you lose your 2 stands and it's just your character unit, then basically you have to kill him to a man. So this combination, 6, this is sort of like the magic number, 6 plus character. It becomes sort of like very hard to dislodge because they have the resolve bonuses. They're very hard to break plus shattered. They don't have exactly the best attack profile, but Force Grown Drone doesn't really attack. And then lastly, for the mandatory Ferromancy, I gave an Accelerated Hibernation, which is an option. I never sort of used this Ferromancy at all in my games because the Biotic Wellspring plus the Unnumbered Menagerie is enough to sort of keep everyone sort of alive. So this ability was sort of wasted. So I might go with like a lower Ferromancy just to sort of keep it going. And then we have Abomination. Mostly bringing Abomination because it's a fun model, right? Abomination, speed 10, hell yeah. And then for my second squad, squad, I brought the High Clone Executor, again, with a unit of Force Grown Drone, 6 Force Grown Drones, and a Marksman Clone, and a Vanguard Clone. So this is sort of like very important. Let me explain this to you. So with the High Clone Executor, you sort of have the same recipe as the Ferromancer. You start at base resolve 4. Because of your big size, you start at base resolve 5. And I also give, because there's some spare points, I give a tactical 1, so you get to reroll 1 failed resolve test. Now backed up with the healing from the Unnumbered Menagerie, plus the Ferromancer, plus the Biomancer on the bottom, suddenly you have a very sticky unit that will just simply refuse to die from resolve test. Resolve 5 plus the 1 reroll from the tactical. And also, like, the High Clone Executor is not exactly terrible in combat with his attack 5 as well, and cleave 1, so they're pretty decent. They can hit decently hard randomly. And of course, the Marksman Clone. Now, this is probably the most important model in the list, the Marksman Clone. This will be sort of hiding behind all your Force Grown Drones with their Arcing Fire rule, enabling them to reach anywhere in the battlefield. So, with a single fire from the Marksman Clone, so we're looking at 21 shots. Because they have attack of 2, they have volley of 2, and there's 5 of them, so that's 20 shot. Normally it's 40 shot, but it's reduced to half, so 20 shot plus the 1 liter, 21 shot at volley of 2. Now this is a large amount of fire. Like I said, it's just really, really good. And then Vanguard Clones. Now this is sort of like where I'm not sure where I need to spend my points are. My argument is that I do need a medium model to contest the objective, and I just think that Vanguard Clone is sort of like where I want it to be. But if you want to maximize sort of the ability of the Ferromancer, then I probably would add in a Brute Drone in here. But if I want to add Brute Drone, I need to add another Force Grown Drone here, which means that it's sort of like a wasted, like it's an extra point. I think extra like 60 or 80 something points that I need to let go if I want to add like an extra Force Grown Drone plus Brute Drone. So I ended up taking the Vanguard Clones. They're quite okay. And then lastly, you have Biomancer plus the Force Grown Drone plus the Abomination. Biomancer doesn't have any upgrade. It's just a very basic 60 points character model. But yeah. So how does this list even win? It's the question here. You move your army across the battlefield and then force the opponent to contest the objectives, and then use your medium regiments, of which there's only 2 of them, and your 2 heavy regiments to score points. Don't laugh, it works. So for my second list, I brought this list called How Many Avatara? So, confession time. Avatara is like my favorite model in the game. Like, that's probably the reason I got into Spire in the first place. Their aesthetics of these Japanese Ningyo dolls with their naginata, slashing across the battlefield. There's just an image that's so cool. Alongside the marksman clone, which they have their hakamas and their longbows. It feels very Japanese. Don't at me on the Vanguard clones and Vanguard clone infiltrators. Anyway, there's a lot of Japanese influence in the Spires, and I think that's a very cool design, combining this sort of like 2 very differing approach to design-wise. Anyway, back to Avatara. So the Avatara list, first of all, I'm using the personalized epigenetic triggers, which gives my entire army burnout. So burnout will give me an extra movement, +1 clash and +2 march. So it's good to engage with this burnout. However, we also get Decay 3. So you really want to be slightly careful in using this ability. Of course, with the Avatara, it becomes Decay 2. So they're slightly less worrisome if you have this decay on them. So first with the Biomancer, it's not an overly decked out Biomancer here. It has the Unstable Enhancement Biomancy, which okay, it's one of the best Biomancy that Spire has access to. Let's just read what Unstable Enhancement does. So Unstable Enhancement, that's unstoppable. So what does it do is that draw your next command card. Until the end of the round, all stands get +4 march, +2 clash, and +1 volley. Then they have Decay 3, 4 if it's brute, and 6 if it's a monster regiment. So essentially, you're throwing some regiments into a missile to throw them straight at the opponent. Very good for alpha striking. You have, with the +4 march, Avatar suddenly becomes movement 11, and with a clash of 4, they can hit a lot of things. They will sort of half explode along the way, but hey, that's what they are there for. Reason. If I were sort of give a chance to redo this list, I might instead bring the Venom Blade, the Envenom. I forget what it's actually called. But yeah. Biomancer with just a formality of 3 force-grown drones. I am not expecting... So this Biomancer's purpose in life is just to hide behind the Avatar wall and just push button to heal. That's literally what it's trying to do. Push button, don't die, heal up the Avatar. That's it. The second one, we have a High Clone Executor, which I give him the Advanced Burrowing Parasites and Tactical 1. Of course, it's going to be put inside the Vanguard Clone Infiltrators, which is... Even with their nerfs at 195 points, they're still fairly disgusting unit. I've sung a lot of praises with this Vanguard Clone Infiltrators. Many games have been won on the back of these guys, and yeah, they just outperform a lot of things, and they're very annoying. Like, they have a speed of 6, they have the Vanguard rule, so on turn 1 they can march 18 inches. Because of their fluid formation, they can sort of steal like a 1 inch extra movement. So yeah, they're excellent. They can throw out a lot of dices with deadly shot. It's quite disgusting, this unit. And then I brought also a force-grown drone. Now this is only a formality for me to bring about the Vanguard clones as well as the Marksman clones. Now the Marksman clone is only 3 because of points restriction, but I think they're quite fairly okay. So the role of this squad right here is sort of to shore up some early offenses with the Vanguard clone infiltrators. They're there to sort of carefully and slowly move up the enemy board and threaten anyone that goes to within 18 inches of them. So this is very important as sort of like a major distraction to the opponent, a roadblock that they have to get rid of. Otherwise, they get peppered by, I don't know, if within 18 inches they get shot by 23 times 2, 6, 24 shot, 24 shots, 12 shots. Yep. 24 shots, well 25 shots from the stat fire plus the actual shot. If you're within 9 of them, oh boy, that's times 2, baby. That's times 2. So with the deadly shot, if you're running things, Knights will get nervous, Raptors can get nervous, even Jotnar can get nervous against these guys. And then for the creme de la resistance, no, that's I was about to say. Alright, so I was about to say creme de la creme and piece de la resistance, but I sort of combined them into two, so it's got cream de la resistance, which is extremely wrong. Don't make a comment on this. It's just a slight brain fart. Lineage Highborn with 8 Avataras. So the answer to the question is how many Avataras? The answer is 9 Avataras. So, what do these bad boys do? They are there to march across the battlefield, engage the enemy line, and then wreck the shit out of them. That's it. That's their sole purpose in life. The Lineage Highborn got a bit of some nice buff. It was pretty underpowered for 120 points model. I think they initially only had an attack of like 4 or 5, and then they upped it to 6, which is really pretty good, but everything else stays the same. So it's just a direct buff to these guys. So yeah, the Avatara with the full deck of leader per standard bearers, so they get an extra movement of 1 inch when they're second moving, as well as the reroll when they're charging, which is super important. Clash of 2, so the Clash of 2 is quite pitiable, so that's why like the burnout makes them Clash 3, which is decent. It's nothing too insane. Oh, never mind. Burnout doesn't actually. Oh, it does give you. What am I saying? Yeah, very straightforward list though. You just march up your Avatara, grab the center point objective, and just sit there until the end of the game. This is sort of like a meme list in a way. Maybe not exactly a meme list. I meant to put in like Centaur Avatar, but we don't have them yet, and I'm sticking by my own rules. So unreleased models in my site, I cannot use them. So it's a very straightforward list. It's very scary. So now let's go to the match itself. So let's talk about the match. So for my first game, I was, well, technically my second game, because for first game, so we had a player who dropped out in sort of like before the tournament started, but you don't have anyone to go and have a, they don't, having a bye around one feels bad because you really just want to play. So I decided to give myself sort of like, I'll fight against him, quote unquote, to just sort of like keep the match going, because I do need to TO anyway. So the second game, I was up against Daniel, against his Speedy Dweg's list. He's a very good Dweg home player. His army is fully decked out, fully painted, very nice looking. You might have seen it either in Facebook, Discord, or at his Instagram at DVH Minis. So do check it out. I'm giving you a shout out here, Daniel. All right, cool. So with his list, so he made 2 lists for this tournament. The first is the Burn Spire, and this Burn Dwegs, and this is the Speedy Dwegs. So the reason why he chose the Speedy Dwegs is because we're fighting in like the long table. So it was 72 inch across from me to him. So he needed a list that can go relatively fast. That's why he brought Flame Berserkers. They're a light unit. They're a light unit. They can move really fast. Hold Ballista for early pressure, Tempered Sorcerer under Fireforge. This is sort of their big hitters. Inferno Automata to just sort of, again, they can't, because of the feral rule, they can't be used to forward your deployment zone, but their early pressure, they can threaten some early archers, and they're really good. And of course the Holt Ray under the Holt Thane's list. So, if I'm not mistaken, the Ardent Creed is, increases their march characteristic by 1 in the regiments belonging to the Warlord. Now, because the Warlord is the Ardent Caraway, so both the Flame Berserkers and the Holt Ballistae gets an extra movement of 1, making the Berserker speed of 6, that becomes speed of 12 when they march. So, this is really good, because the Flame Berserkers are incredibly difficult to take down. For a unit that has Berserker on it, they have defense of 3 and they have resolve of 5. Plus Aura of Death, plus Flurry, they're gonna punch a lot of things and they can do it really well. And there's like 5 stand of them, plus the Ardent Caraway. Oy vey! A lot of shenanigans, a lot of movements. Plus, if you can't get rid of him, the Fireforge is sitting in the back with also like Inferno Automata, and then you have the whole things to clean it up with their Attack 5, Fueled by Furnace, and Perfectly Balanced Combat 1, Combat 2. So, the way that the game was played out is that we basically just move our army across the board. We were playing the objective that has two objectives on our side that we need to hold with. We need to hold both with a medium unit, and then one in the middle that we can hold with either medium or heavy. If you hold two of your own, you get 1 point. If you hold one on the opposite side of the enemy, you get 2 points. So I know that if I'm using my other list, I only have one blob of Avatara, and Daniel can just use his Fire Forge to get rid of this Avatara really, really well, because the Fire Forge has armor piercing too, and Avatara doesn't like to be armor pierced. So I know that Dwegham's weaknesses is number of attacks, so I'm using that as my advantage, because I know this Lampert Sorcerer is only bringing, I think he brought only Coruscation. Yep, he only brought Coruscation, so I'm not overly afraid of losing out. Probably the only thing that I'm worried about is Dismay, which can break if he combos it, or I miss sort of activate, then one unit could just get shattered like immediately. So what ended up happening was Daniel sort of like moved his army across the board. I was using my Force Grown Drone as sort of like just like a massive roadblock. And at one point, Daniel needed like a 4+ charge and a 3+ charge. He failed both, giving me 1 turn sort of extra to basically not do anything while my guys scored. So it was just a slow creep across the battlefield. Eventually, though, Daniel sort of left his position and tried to crush my army. He finally made a breakthrough on my left flank, his right flank. He got rid of the High Clone Executor with a Force Grown Drone, and then his Infernal Automata charged through my archer lines. However, at that moment, my 2 Abomination made a run to his back line, and then suddenly, because of their movement of 10, I can move out 20 inches when I arrive, and then I can move another 20 inches the next turn, immediately covering almost 3/4 of the table size, and I was already at his objective when I need to be on the objective. And at that point, I was gaining basically 4 points per turn. Daniel was only gaining 1 point per turn. By the time he got rid of 1 Abomination, the damage was already dealt. It was already around turn 9, turn 10. And I just need to survive like basically 1 more turn, and the game was finished. So, the weakness for Dwegham is quite apparent against the Meatwall list. Simply, they have a lot of good quality attacks, but good quality attacks simply does nothing to the Force Grown Drones, because, defensively they're really, really bad. And, if you're doing a lot of damages from the defense, and I have like basically good resolve, you can't basically get rid of the Force Grown Drones. So that sort of ended up in my advantage. And also Daniel could have probably protected his backline even further. That was sort of like the play that I made with my Abomination. You zoom it across the battlefield, getting to that, and then the Ardent Caraway ended up turning around. Sorry, not the Ardent Caraway. The Holt Ray eventually turned around and killed one of the Abomination. But again, like I said, at that point, it was done and dusted. So it was good. It showed that the list has potential. Even though I was fairly worried that I have a bunch of light units and my scoring unit is like only 2 mediums and 2 heavies, but due to some plays that basically buys me a lot of time, I was sort of moving very safely, baiting out this 3+4+ charge from Daniel, which eventually got into my advantage. So that was an excellent game. I got a lot of VPs from it because I won via VP. I think I got like 8 or 10 VP by the end of the game. But that was a good game. So for my finals, or my second game of the day, it was sort of like the finals. I was up against Andrew, who has appeared in his channel before. He really wants to beat me and see if he can get his reckoning in this tournament. So he brought a fairly scary list of 100 Kingdom here, like really freaking scary. First of all, a fully decked out Chapter Mage with Learn in the Occult, Arcane 1, Arcane 2, Arcane 3, and School of Air for the Wombo combo that I'm going to talk to you about in a very soon. She's carried inside a Man of Arms, just minimum for formality purposes. Next, we got the Imperial Officer with Fire and Advance, Brother's Folly, Kiss Farewell, and Marksmanship. Couple that up with a Militia, again, for formality purposes, and 5 Hunter Cadres. Now, this is... So this was a unit that I was fairly afraid of breaking. So he brought two lists. The first one is a very scary gun line with 7 longbowmen, but he was saying that he was afraid that his longbowman doesn't have enough damage to go through my Avatara, and thinks that the Hunter Cater has sort of like a better chance against those guys. Armor piercing 1, barrage 120 inches, volley of 2, cleave 1 on the charge, fearless, fiend hunter, and unstoppable. So they can fight both in melee as well as in range. And let's go through the list first. Noble Lord, Cavalry, Brutal Impact 2, Speed of Horse, Turn of Tide, and Lorien Lance, which give him, like, I believe, some extra things on the charge. With 5 Household Knights, Men-at-Arms, and a formality of 3 Household Units, alongside another 3 Household Units. So in total, there's 8 Household Knights. So now let's talk about that combo I was talking about. So, first of all, the one that he used a spell. I believe it's called Seeking Winds. So Seeking Winds is not obscured by range, as long as within the maximum range of the weapon. So with the Seeking Winds and the Hunter Caters, effectively what he's doing every turn, he's gonna shot me for 21 shot with take aim at volley 3 and armor piercing 1. And because of the fire in advance and murderous volley, he's also shooting with marksmanship with the Kiss Farewell. If I'm within a certain range from the Noble Lord, I would have to make a panic test. So also Kiss Farewell gives it deadly shot. So with deadly shot, 3 barrage, as well as the marksmanship, so it's 5 shots with deadly shot from the Imperial officer. Suddenly, I'm being shot from 5 plus 21, so that's 26 shots on the approach against these guys. Very, very scary combo. I was very scared of basically being wiped out even before I touch base with it. So let's see how this sort of went out and played out. So of course my Vanguard Clones Infiltrators move in first. They're there to sort of like secure some midline presence and sort of like give a no-go zone to Andrew. I was sort of, in a sense, trying to bait him into shooting like a lower target. So I was feeding him like my single force-grown drone that has 3. Of course, I don't want to give him the force-grown drone that has the Biomancer, so he's staying way back. If possible, do not engage in any conflict whatsoever. Your job is to stay in the back end and hopefully do nothing later on. So, as sort of expected, my units get peppered relatively fast. I think the force-grown drone just died just like that. But it's okay, because at the end of the day, I was shaving some activation from my side, making sure that I can move faster the next round. So now, again, the Avatara does come in eventually. They came in a bit late. I think they come in like around turn 3. And Andrew got like 1 good shot with the longbow. With the militia. Hunter Cater. I think I was slightly panicking at this moment because I took like too much damage rather than I was expecting, and my heal from my Biotic Wellspring, I was only like reaching 1 or 2, so I was losing more than I can heal, which is bad for Spire. You generally want to have more the other way around. So I was at that moment I was sort of trying to hold them back just a bit, and then try for like a last activation charge. But the problem is, Andrew made a position where if I decide to engage his line, his knights would have been on a counter charge. So at that moment, I was basically stuck between a rock and a hard place. At the same time, if I don't move, I'll get shot to pieces. But if I do move, I'll get charged by the knights. So at that point, Andrew made, I would say, sort of like a tactical mistake. What he did was that I moved up my other force-grown drones into like a baiting position, and then he took the bait, he charged those force-grown drones, and then I flank charged him with my Avatar because he was looking at the distance saying that it's a 4+ charge, I think I can do it. And then I popped the burnout to give him some extra movements, and then because of my unstoppable, so it was basically a 2+ with rerolls. So I engaged his line, I engaged the knight from the flank, very important, and the knight took a lot of beatings, and I was expecting some shots from the Hunter Cater, but the way that the game works is that it's because it's not a shield bonus, they have a base defense of 4, so they don't take a lot of damage from like being sort of flank shot by them. What I was sort of worried about is because they didn't need to make a morale test because of the what's that ability called from the Murderous Folly. But eventually it ended up only causing like 1 or 2 extra damage. So at that moment I was sort of net positive in terms of healing. So my Avatar was sort of intact at that point. His knight was pinned down. My army was my Vanguard clone infiltrator because it was distracted, finished off some militia on the right, and it starts creeping slowly towards the Hunter Cater line. At that moment, the knight was then wiped out. Andrew proceeds to still shoot at my Avatar to no avail because I was sort of basically at that point net positive, and he eventually conceded a couple of turns later from basically losing too much. Well, at that moment he didn't sort of like lose a lot, but he figured if the game continues on for like 3 more turns and the outcome wouldn't change too significantly, so he conceded at that point. So I was sort of lucky in that matchup because at no incentive to Andrew, because I wasn't fighting over an objective, I was sort of just licking my chops, trying to sort of like find what's the best time to basically come in and charge. So he had all the time in his world, so he could probably just wait just a little bit more until the archers can do a lot of damage. But I guess he figured out that it's not doing as much damage as he sort of expected, so he sent in a knight to hopefully keep them more in line so that he can like get more rounds of shooting, and then he would then proceed to do the scoring while both my Avatar is pinned down and his archer line basically gets like a free shot at my guys. It didn't end up working out for him, unfortunately, and it worked out for me because yeah, I just kept my line intact, and it just happens. So with those 2 battle reports in mind, again, credits to all my opponents. We all played very, very well. We might play like 1 or 2 mistakes, but hey, it's in the spirit of the game. I want to congratulate you 2 for your valiant effort on the battlefield. And yeah, again, try again next time. We'll have more tournaments later on in the future. So that's it for the list. I would share you the list if I can later on in the video description, or maybe somewhere in the comments if you were interested in trying out this list. But essentially, what I learned from these 2 tournaments and things that I would have sort of changed in the way that I built my list is that probably Venom is the better spell to take. Because I was rolling so many dices, and because I was rolling so many dices, there is a good chance for the opponent to crit fail by rolling 6. So I want to sort of stack the odds on my side, just to sort of like gamify it and just roll. In a war game, if you roll more dice, then the chances of things happening badly for you also is increased. So I would like to take that opportunity to sort of like if I can do it again, I would probably do it with like more scary stuff. And yeah, again, great thanks to everyone who's participated in the tournament, and thanks to you guys also for watching until the end of this video. We'll have more videos in a couple of, hopefully not in a couple of weeks, in a couple of days. But yeah, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.